All right, so last time we made Tangerine panic, which looks like this. And then each time I get hit, it flashes, and you can see my lives go down. And then eventually, when I have 0 lives, the game is over. Except the problem is the code is like 200, almost 300 lines long, and there's a lot of repetition. I got one set of variables for every single ball object, for every single tangerine, and there's like 9 tangerines. And so you end up with a lot of repetition, a lot of copying and pasting. And that's terrible. So now I'm going to remake the same program using objects and using ArrayLists, and you'll see how nice it is. So I'm going to start by just copying Tangerine Panic, and I'm going to call it Tangerine Panic 2. And now I already have a ball object, but let's just make sure it's got all the things I need. So a ball has an x and a y coordinate. It's got an x speed and a y speed and a diameter, and all of those get set. I've got a move method, which moves it. That looks good. I've got a reverse x and reverse y. Update position. Okay, so what do I actually want it to do? So update position is supposed to do like all of the moving of my tangerine. So first I want it to move, which will change its xy coordinates according to its speed. I do not want it to bounce off the horizontal walls, so I'm going to delete that part. And I also don't want it to bounce off the top of the screen, but I do want it to bounce off the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to keep this part. And then the only other thing I want is I want to apply gravity, which is a method that doesn't exist yet, but I'm going to make it. So apply gravity. And there I'm going to say y speed equals y speed plus gravity. And then up at the top, I'm going to define what gravity is. Final float gravity equals 0.6. F. F for float. Okay. And remember, float is the data type. If I don't have the F here, it thinks it's a double. And you can't take a double and assign it to a float. All right, so I've got a set position off screen. I've got set random speeds, except for this application, I'm going to break this up. I'm going to say set random x speed, and it's only going to set my x speed at random, and it's going to be between 0 and 6. All right. I don't need this method, but it's not hurting anything. That's okay. I don't really need grow or shrink, but that I can keep them. That's okay. Okay, so I think the ball object is going to do everything I want it to. So now comes the good stuff. So instead of having all the variables created in advance, let's go ahead and create an array list of ball objects called ball list. All right, and I got to import array list. I'll keep all of these variables for person. That seems fine. I'll keep lives. That seems fine. I don't need gravity anymore because all of that is going to be handled by the ball object itself. I still need time. Number of balls on screen, I don't really need because that's going to be the same as the size of this list. It's like whenever I create a new ball object, I'm going to put it in this list. So if I want to know how many objects are on the screen, I just ask the list for what its size is. So I don't need this either. I do still need game over. All right, cool. So it's getting shorter already. Inside setup, this is where I need to actually say the ball list is a new array list. We'll initialize the person. That's fine. But now we don't need to do this because there are no balls on the screen when the game starts, so there's no need to initialize them anywhere. All right, great. Let's keep if game over is true. That's fine. So now let's do spawning of the ball objects. So we still have this thing where time is counting down, and when time hits 0, we'll reset it. Except now we don't have to worry about this. Like all we really need to do is make a new ball object. And let's see, it's expecting an x coordinate, which is going to be 1, a y coordinate, which is going to be 780. Nope, which is going to be like 20. Where was I creating the y coordinates? Oh, at 100. Okay. So look, I'm reproducing this here. Whenever this is like, it's not creating an object because there were no objects. But here I'm telling my ball where it needs to start. It needs to start at an x of 1, a y of 100, and a speed and a speed. So instead, I'm going to say start at 1, comma 100. The x speed and y speed I'm going to set to be 0 and 0. And you might wonder, like, why am I not setting the x speed to be random? But the answer, I also have to give it a diameter. But the answer why I'm not setting the x speed at random is because I made this set random x speed command that does it for me. Okay, so when the counter has counted, when the time has counted down to 0, I create a new ball object, I set its speed randomly, and now I tell the ball list that I want to add that ball to the list. And that's it. Now I can delete all this. And I also don't need to increment number of balls on screen. So you can see what a huge savings this was. Every time this if statement is true, I just make a new ball, add it to the list. All right, so now let's talk about drawing all the ball objects. So instead of having this happen 9 times, I can have a loop. So let's do this. I'm going to set the location to go from 0 up to ball list.size. So it's going to loop through every location in the ball list. I'm going to say ball B equals ball list.get location. So I'm going to get each ball out of the list. And then I'm going to draw an ellipse at the balls X and Y, and then B dot diameter, and then B dot diameter. Okay, so now I can delete all this, and that will draw all of the ball objects. Okay, what about moving all of the ball objects? So here, if you see, it's adding 1. Sorry, here we're adding gravity, and then here we're updating the x coordinates, and here we're updating the y coordinates. And this is about bouncing off the bottom of the screen. But if you remember inside ball, our update position method does all that. It applies gravity, it moves, and it bounces off the bottom of the screen. So all of that code happens whenever we tell a ball to update its position. So we can actually delete all of this and just do the same thing. We're going to loop starting at location 0, going to the end of the ball list. We get each ball out. Only this time we tell each ball to update its position. And we actually can make it even shorter than this. Here I'm looping through every single ball and telling it to draw itself. And then I'm looping through every single ball again and telling them to update their positions. There's no sense in looping through every ball object twice. Instead, what I could do, I just loop through every ball object once, I tell it to draw itself, and then I tell it to update its position right afterwards. So I can, because there were really only 2 things I wanted to do to each ball, and I can do them both inside the same loop. All right, so now let's talk about collision detection. So the way this collision detection works is I check to see if the ball is inside the box defined by the person. So let's think about how we want to handle this using objects and loops. Okay, I'm going to engage in some wishful thinking here. So we know that we have a command called update position that updates a ball's position. I wish that the ball objects had a command that would let me ask, is the ball hitting the person? So, because if I had a command like that, I could say if the ball is hitting, and then I would have to give it all the information about the person, so like person X, person Y, person width, person height. So those are like the inputs to the command, because a ball can't know if it's hitting a person unless it knows all the coordinates for the person. But and this is red right now because we don't have a command like this, but let's pretend that we did have a command where you could ask a ball, are you hitting a rectangle defined by those variables? And so if that's true, that we're hitting a person, then let's think about what we'd want to do. Then that would be like this if statement being true. So now I could do things like subtract from the lives, and I could tell that ball object to set its position off the screen, which is like what this was doing, and I could flash the background red. except that because this is happening inside the loop, I would be checking to see if each ball, one at a time, were hitting the person. I don't have to repeat this if statement 9 times because it's already repeating inside the loop. So that would be great because that would let me now delete all of this code. But all I need is to make this command. Okay, so let's do it. Here I am inside ball main. Oh, nope. Ball main is not what I want. I wanted ball. Okay. So here I am inside ball. I'm going to make a new command called IsHitting, where I'm going to take a, I guess let's call it person X. Let's just call it the same thing that we did in the other place. You don't have to, but person X, person Y, person width, person height. Okay. So now let's go back here. Oh, I deleted all my if statements. Well, let's remember how this worked. So I wanted to say, so if my own x coordinate is bigger than the person x coordinate, and my own x coordinate is smaller than the person x plus the person width, so that's like, is the ball horizontally positioned over the person? And then if my own y coordinate plus diameter over 2, so that means if the bottom point on the ball is bigger than the person's y, so that's like the top of the person, then I'm going to return true. What does that return true mean? Remember, the command is supposed to answer the question, is this ball object hitting the person defined by these input variables? And so if the answer is yes, I want to return an answer that is yes. So that means it's not a void method, it's going to return a Boolean. So if these if statements are true, that means I am hitting the person, so I'm going to return true. Otherwise, I'm going to return false at the end. So like if both of these are not true, then I'm going to return false. All right, so let's go back to Tangerine Panic. Great. So now, hopefully this is going to work. So look at how amazingly short this is compared to what it used to be. We're looping over each object. We get each ball out of the list. We tell it to draw itself, update its own position. We ask it if it's hitting the person. If it is, we subtract from the lives and set that particular ball off the screen again. And we flash the background. Okay, and then all the player stuff and displaying the lives, that's all fixed. Okay, cool. So now the code went from being almost 300 lines to about 90. So I made the code about 1/3 the size that it used to be. Let's go ahead and run it and see if, oh, I'm running Tangerine Panic 1 still. So that should look the same. I'm going to call this Tangerine Panic 2, and let's make sure we're running the correct one. Cool, so it looks like it's still working. Collision detection still works. Lovely.